I'm excited to see people entering tonight. We'll be welcoming you. We're going to cover a lot of ground tonight, beginning with some opening remarks about the coalition. And then Sarah Dooling from Mass Climate Action Network will present a summary of the survey results that were taken right here on Cape Ann. And they go into some details about the responses. Then people will be, all of us here will be randomly assigned to breakout groups. They are relatively small, and you'll have the opportunity to talk about the results with the facilitators. Then we will come back to the larger group for a brief highlight of each of those conversations, just to get a taste. And then we'll end the evening with something that you asked for on the survey, which is some action steps you could take. And we'll give a few so that you will have an opportunity to choose what you would like to do. So I would like to begin tonight by just bringing us to this time in this place in the world of climate change networking on Cape Ann. First, I want to thank you for filling out the survey. Not all of you did, but 75 people filled it out, and we are delighted, and that's why we want you to hear the results. But we also are excited to hear from those of you who did not take the survey in the breakout rooms and hear your voice, your thoughts and feelings as part of this dialogue. The reason that we're doing this at this time is that a lot has changed in climate change work in the last couple of years. Things have happened locally, regionally, and internationally. There's more awareness about the devastating effects of climate change that's already happening now. Most of us have seen some of those. And in the climate change work, which we were pretty much kicked off by some people through Town Green, their focus, Town Green's focus, has becoming significantly shifted to managing grant-funded projects and becoming an independent nonprofit. Meanwhile, the coalition has been clarifying its identity as a grassroots organization. And some slides of what we've been working on, because they have continued to work through all of these changes, doing exciting projects. And we just want to highlight some of these in the slides without going into them in detail. But they've also been clarifying their identity as a grassroots organization with a focus on networking and volunteer activities to affect positive change. So we decided this was a good time as we're thinking about how to be an even better grassroots organization involving even more volunteers who care so much about this, to start with a survey and find out what the community is really thinking. So we're starting with you. You're our kind of inner circle of the community, the people who are most interested, who have been paying the most attention. So we got a lot of help on how to do this survey from Sarah Dooling, who's the executive director of Mass Climate Action Network. And she has a lot of experience with surveys and how to interpret them. And Sarah, we're very grateful to you. I am going to introduce her because she is going to take the first real third of this meeting, a little more, almost half, and really let us hear about ourselves, what we have been saying. And Sarah was born in Newton and returned to Massachusetts after living in Texas for the past 10 years. She is an urban ecologist and a community organizer who believes in the power of the people to create a livable, breathable future for us all. She is delighted to join us this evening. And so, Sarah, let me turn the floor over to you. And thank you so much for being here tonight.
Oh, absolutely. My pleasure. Thanks for that lovely introduction, Gail. And hello to everyone on the call this evening. It's really wonderful to be here and to support the important work that you all have been doing, and look forward to continuing to work with all of you. I just want to talk a little bit about the organization that I run, and then we'll move through some big framing points that I'd like to make. So the Massachusetts Climate Action Network, we are a statewide organization with over 65 chapters across the Commonwealth, including the Cape Ann Climate Coalition. Mass climate action, we believe in the power of acting locally to transform buildings, which is an area that we really focus on, as well as municipal utilities, from being polluters and part of the problem to being protectors of our health, the well-being of communities, and of the natural world that surrounds us. When the core planning members of the Cape Ann Climate Coalition approached me earlier this year to talk about the coalition's ideas for moving on local actions, I was really excited to learn more about what was happening on the North Shore and to engage in deeper conversation about how the coalition was evaluating itself with an eye towards identifying future work that will have significant impact. This is exactly what so many coalitions around the state that are affiliated with MCAN are doing. So, for instance, I worked with Green Hansen on creating listening sessions for town residents in order to help them identify shared concerns and shared values about their own town's future that cut across the political aisle. In Chelmsford, Mass Climate Action, I was invited to present on strategies for reducing emissions in buildings, excuse me. And Chelmsford residents made it super clear that they are really prioritizing retrofits as a core problem in Chelmsford. It's different in Eastham, where I've been working with folks there to explore how to work with town officials on a master plan that will support emissions-free buildings in harmony with landscape design strategies that prioritize sequestering carbon. So this is all a way of saying that each community begins their work from their own set of values and their own priorities. And each group is building a movement to sustain their efforts and to create community dialogue about their preferred futures. The one commonality that I do see across all of these efforts is that residents, people living in the community, recognize the need to come together, to be in conversation, even difficult conversations, in order to create a better future. I'm assuming many of you on the call tonight have responded to the coalition's invitation to engage in conversation about your preferred future for your community. You're already part of the movement, and this tonight is a moment of reflection and discernment as the coalition ponders the legacy that you all want to create. How communities build a movement depends on what you, in this place with lots of community dynamics, what you value and what you love. And the Cape Ann Climate Coalition is doing what so many other communities are doing across the state. You're not alone, you're part of the momentum. The climate action agenda, very broadly, can be complex and have so many facets associated with it. And community groups in Massachusetts are clearly making choices about the particular projects, the particular goals that they want to focus on. No coalition can accomplish all that needs doing. It is crucial to develop priorities and to focus on collective action to achieve the strongest and most meaningful change. And from my engagement with the planning members of the coalition and reading your newsletter, I know this coalition really is about protecting what you love. And it's clear to me through my work alongside people like Valerie and Gail and Dick and Tom, and in reviewing the survey responses, that you all love the beautiful landscapes. So do I. bounties of the sea and the opportunity to come together tonight to protect this place, your families, and your neighbors. And I've also noticed in the survey responses and in conversations that you all are not letting the sense of feeling overwhelmed or that sense of doom constrain you. Indeed, what's clear to me is that this coalition is dedicated to building a movement of civic-minded leaders working together and agreeing to invest your precious time, agreeing to make connections, share knowledge, and be passionate about making sure your peace remains vital, healed, and healing for all residents. So working as a part of a coalition, as many of you know, can be difficult. However, as I have worked alongside your colleagues here tonight, I am continuously struck by their tenacity, their passion for wanting to listen, for reaching out to all members, and for engaging people in many kinds of work that this coalition can pursue. The head, the heart, and the hands come together in coalition work. This is a movement in the making. Together, we are powerful. Together, you are powerful. And tonight begins your process for sitting with your values and reflecting on what they mean for the priorities that can emerge from this coalition's work. All right, thank you. I will move right along into presenting the survey results. So
Yes.
what I'm going to do, there's a lot of information to present. And so what I am going to do is begin with some of the specific responses to individual questions. And I'm going to go a little bit quickly, and then I'm going to end with a summary. And after I end with the summary slide, at that point, we're going to transition into breakout rooms. So don't worry, as we go into breakout rooms, we will have in the chat a list of the key summaries from the survey results. So you will get the recording, a link to the recording after tonight's event, and you will have the slide deck associated with the follow-up content as well. So here we go. First of all, a big bucket of gratitude to everybody that completed the survey. 75 of you responded, representing residents who already care about the climate. Respondents included both current coalition members as well as other residents of Cape Ann. And so you are the folks that are willing to be mobilized and willing to move ahead in pursuing coalition work. So tonight's conversation is really about reviewing the results and seeking your reactions and your further input. And that's the purpose of the breakout rooms. There's a lot to digest. So I'm going to go over the individual questions. And these are taken directly from the Google survey. And so this first question is about the top 5 aspects of climate change that you as respondents think that the Cape Ann communities should be focused on. And you'll see here that there's some clear leaders in the pack, if you will. And so right here, almost 70% of people responded saying that they would like to see the coalition focus on renewable energy and clean energy transition. This is followed by another significant set of respondents, 61%, really wanting the coalition to focus on green spaces and marshes, specifically for the purposes of sequestering carbon. So this is an interesting pairing. This is saying we want to pay attention to the built environment, but also the natural environment, specifically for the purposes of sequestering carbon. These need to work together as a dual priority for the coalition. This is followed up by coming in as I would say as a shared cluster, folks that really want the coalition to focus on protecting the shoreline and addressing coastal development and strategic relocation. And that is up here, these top 2 in this red circle. So there you go. We're sort of starting to see some interesting bundles of priorities that Cape Ann communities should be focusing on. Coming in sort of at sort of the lower end of the top 5 priorities, some interesting priorities being the retrofitting of buildings specifically to be more energy efficient. And if you think about buildings are the second largest source of emissions in the state, this kind of aligns nicely with that recognition of buildings being part of the problem right now in our built environment. And lastly, coming in again at a roughly the same amount, 36% of respondents said focusing on reducing waste and plastics. So that's kind of an interesting, diverse set of aspects of climate change that respondents think that the Cape Ann communities should be focused on. So this is just a summary slide that you can review at the end of the evening, but it kind of highlights the top 5 aspects of climate change. Moving on to the second question, which of these aspects of climate change would you, as a member of the coalition, consider volunteering to work on as part of the coalition? And again, you can kind of see a cluster of leaders, sort of clear dominant responses. And it's fascinating looking here, the majority of folks, 44% of respondents said, you know what, I'm really interested in volunteering on thinking about how to promote green spaces and work with trees and tree cover around sequestering carbon. So that's resonating pretty strongly with folks. Along those same lines, 32% of respondents said we really are interested in volunteering on projects and efforts focusing on biodiversity and habitat restoration. So there's a clear love of the natural landscape that's pretty evident here. Coming in, 2 responses representing 28% of respondents, again, pivoting back to what was highlighted in the first question, specifically wanting to focus on renewable energy and a clean energy transition. 28% considered volunteering on that particular issue, in addition to reducing plastics and waste. So again, it's this natural landscape and built environment binary coming together. And 25% of folks said, you know what, we still really want to volunteer on efforts associated with protecting the shoreline and potentially thinking about seawalls and other kinds of natural barriers to really address protecting that shoreline, given the vulnerability of many communities on the North Shore. So again, this is just a summary slide emphasizing that these responses are somewhat similar to the first set of responses. Third question asks, what are the top 5 groups that you think the coalition would benefit from listening to and engaging with? And there are some clear dominant responses, and those include 54, almost 55% of people who took the survey said, we really want the coalition. We think they would benefit from engaging with scientists and engineers. That's fascinating to me because we know science alone cannot solve the climate challenge, but knowing the facts and understanding the science is a great, fantastic start. What is equally fascinating to me, coming in at 48%, is a clear signal to the coalition that connecting with and engaging with young adults is also important. So 48% of respondents highlighted that particular group. Coming in each at 36%, there are a variety of different kinds of stakeholder groups that folks considered relevant and important, including students, elementary, junior high, high school, fishermen, which makes sense if people think protecting the shoreline is something that the coalition, that either they want to personally work on as a volunteer or is a top priority for the coalition. Legislators and government, y'all are civic minded already, so this kind of makes sense. And then coming in at the end of this set of 4 are environmental leaders. So there you go, really prioritizing scientific knowledge, reaching out to young adults, but making sure that the coalition connects with students, fishermen, legislators, and government officials, as well as environmental leaders. there's part of your roadmap for outreach. Okay, so pardon the small text here. This question is about which groups would respondents personally consider meeting with as part of an expanded outreach program and networking that the coalition would take up. And there are some clear dominant responses here. And what's fascinating to me, given the previous question, is that students come out very clearly as a core group that respondents feel that they can connect students to the coalition. Also coming out very strongly are the environmental leaders. So there are some key groups here that folks feel connected to and are willing to connect these groups to the coalition. Likewise, scientists and engineers, and I know folks like Dick Prouty and others with Town Green, really focusing on research and working with scientists with EPA and working with folks at the Graduate School of Design out of Cambridge. So that's great. So in other words, there's a lot of consistency in these responses, which is really important from a survey evaluation perspective. Coming in, again, this emphasis on young adults, this emphasis on legislators and government officials, and again, on community organizers. So you're beginning, what I see in these responses, that there are clear desires, not only for who and what kinds of groups people want the coalition to connect with, but also what are some personal connections that coalition members can make on behalf of the coalition. So the groups that people are willing to meet with on behalf include environmental leaders, students, scientists and engineers, and the other groups that I noticed. All right. This question asked folks which if the coalition could choose to emphasize many different kinds of roles for the future. And this question asks which roles are the most relevant or the most important, which are the top 5. And what is really interesting to me here, that again, there are these clear dominant responses. And so bingo, right out the door, almost the vast majority of folks said, 65% of you said that you really want the coalition to emphasize its role as one of building awareness in your communities through events, educational events, through social media, that it's really this awareness building piece that is super important to respondents. Likewise, bopping down to the bottom of the slide, 61% of you said education and training on climate issues is also a key role. This, from my perspective, this makes a lot of sense based on survey respondents saying that they really value connecting with scientists and engineers, as well as youth and young adults. So it all is beginning to tell a story for potential scenarios and strategies for the coalition moving forward. What is also equally interesting to me is that 57% of the respondents said a key role for the coalition is to act as a liaison and a support for municipal level work. That is very interesting and super pragmatic, because there's a lot going on in your communities at the very local level. What is also interesting is that there is somewhat of an interest for exploring regional collaboration. You know, climate change doesn't adhere to municipal boundaries. And in fact, if communities really want to have a big impact, oftentimes a regional collaborative approach can address financial gaps and coalesce advocacy pressure in very effective ways. So I think that's a very savvy response from folks tonight. And then what's also really interesting to me is that one of the roles respondents see for the coalition is guidance on how coalition members can change their own personal behaviors and choices. And that's really interesting, and it sort of toggles between the civic-minded external work but also the personal individual changes that are required of all of us in our climate changed world. So again, this is just a summary slide. You can look at it once you receive the slide deck later. The next question asks, which of the areas below would people personally consider helping out as part of the coalition? And bingo, there are these huge differences with clearly preferred areas that people would consider personally helping out with. And, you know, here we are, awareness building comes in strongly in the lead, you know, at 45%. This is followed very closely by a personal commitment and interest in working on education and training on climate issues, coming in at 43%. So those are the two big priorities that people responding to the survey said that they would personally consider donating their time and their expertise in service of the coalition. Other responses include, and this is very interesting to me, helping out with coalition members understanding how to change their own behaviors and their own choices. And so this guidance on what private citizens can do came in at 32%, and it resonates very nicely with the previous response. Coming in together, tying at 28% of the survey responses. This included outreach to underrepresented folks in the community, as well as advocating for state and federal legislation. So these two, this is interesting. So this reflects two different things. I think it reflects the interest in, or the belief that, you know, legislative work and advocacy pressure is still part of what folks want to contribute to the coalition, but also recognizing that equity and environmental justice, I'm foreshadowing the next set of responses, is part of what the coalition might be focusing on to certain degrees moving forward, with outreach to underrepresented folks. And that is related specifically to what you could do in an awareness and an outreach campaign. So again, this is just a summary slide that you can peruse at the end. So this question asks, you know, the coalition is interested in how survey respondents would describe your possible contributions as a member of the coalition. And again, you know, fascinating, some clear dominant responses. And again, changes in your own lifestyle came in almost at 70, what would that be, 79%. And so people see changes in your personal lifestyle as contributing directly to the work of the coalition. And that's an interesting and I think super valuable insight to take away. Coming in second with almost 67% of respondents saying that they would describe their possible contribution being related to a commitment to healing nature. And if you think about the earlier responses around wanting to focus on biodiversity and habitat restoration, working on carbon sequestration through forestry and wetlands, thinking about marshes, it all comes together to provide this really interesting narrative about how individual members think about their contribution, to the coalition. Coming in third, here, spreading the word with friends and family as an individual contribution to the coalition resonates very strongly, very nicely with awareness building as well as education. Coming in fourth, a commitment to environmental justice. 61% of respondents said that their personal and possible contribution would focus on environmental justice work. Then 36% of respondents said that they're willing and interested in writing letters and showing up at events related to advocacy work that the coalition sponsors. And then almost 30% of respondents really see their possible contribution to the Cape Ann Coalition focusing on knowledge of people in groups, sort of making those networking connections. And that is also really important. And that builds your base, that helps really build your movement. So this is, again, a summary slide that you can take a look at later. Now, that was an incredibly large amount of information, and I was talking super fast. So I just want to, once again, kind of talk through a narrative before we go into these breakout rooms. So the focus of the coalition, and this is the big bird's eye view, is really thinking about one of the responses being focusing on clean energy transition and renewable energy. A second dominant, clear priority area focus for the coalition, again, is thinking about how to work with natural spaces, the natural landscape, both terrestrial and marsh, for sequestering carbon. So that's a great pairing of the built environment and the natural environment. Respondents really recommend that the coalition engage scientists and engineers. Again, science and scientific knowledge can be powerful. However, the coalition is also being recommended to engage the future, to engage young adults. Key roles for the coalition include raising awareness about climate issues, but also being active and on social media and doing a lot of education in a whole variety of different kinds of venues, I would propose. And that people are willing to connect this coalition to environmental leaders, to young adults, and to students in the community. And people are also willing to help the coalition in raising awareness and in educating folks about climate issues related to the North Shore. Lastly, and I find this, again, fascinating, that people's personal contribution to the coalition, the majority of respondents said it's going to be how changes in our individual lifestyles happen and how we share our experiences doing that, but also people's commitment to healing nature. So this is a summary slide of those really big picture takeaway messages that I took from the survey responses after several conversations with planning members from the Cape Ann Climate Coalition. So we will drop 1 through 5 in the chat once I stop sharing my screen. And now we are going to go into the breakout rooms. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. There we go. And I will turn the microphone over to whoever is moving us into the breakout rooms.
Hi, thank you so much, Sarah. As she said, there's a lot of information for us to process. We have typed, if she can put in another thing in the chat, that's fine. We've typed in the summary of the survey results in the chat and a couple questions. We have 10 people from the coalition who've been active, who are going to be our facilitators. So I will just briefly introduce them. If you're one of those facilitators, just wave your hand. I'm one of them. Jim Seavey is one of them. He's here somewhere. I think you've got time to put your picture on. Susan Hogue, I know you're here somewhere. I saw you. Valerie Nelson, Susie Natty, Dick Prouty, Marsha Hart, Lisa Smith, Susan Quaitman, and Sarah Dooling, who you all have heard. So we are going to, we really want you to participate in these conversations and these breakout groups. We hope that this will help all of us process this information. We just have very open-ended questions, but our facilitators can help get more specific if that helps. We're putting you in these groups very randomly. We're just happy to hear from any of you. We're going to have 25 minutes to talk amongst ourselves. And you together could decide. Maybe if one of you wants to take notes, but we really only have time to report absolute highlights from this. So I think the facilitators feel comfortable checking in with you, make sure we've got you got the highlights down at the end. We really want you to come back for the closing and hear of that. And so we actually have a prize and a raffle for any of you who come back for the report at the end. Your name will be in the raffle for a prize. So I want to thank you very much. Tom Mikas, I believe it's going to spend, it takes a couple minutes. We're all going to be put in breakout groups. People are coming back on. I want to thank everybody. I didn't even get a chance. I wasn't quite about closing as a facilitator. So I was very delighted with the conversation in my group. I wanted to thank everybody for participating, but we really want to thank all of you for participating. 42 of you stayed on. So we only lost just a few less than 10. And I know one person in my group couldn't get her audio to work well enough to participate and wanted to. So I'm sorry for any of you who that did not work out for. I understand, and we're looking forward to talking to any of you that it didn't work out for. So what I wanted to say is just I'm going to go through each of the facilitators to just tell us, share a little bit, and then really it's only a little bit. We're going to spend 10 minutes of this, so that's like 1 minute a group, to tell us maybe a high point of something in their conversation, and just so that I'm just going to tell you, just as on my screen, the next person is Sarah, and Sarah, you're going to be next, but I'll start to give you all a chance to think about what you're going to say. In my group, we were talking at the end that we came with different skills and we shared the same interests of wanting to know how to work together to do these things. But some of the people had a more scientific understanding of what was going on. And some of the people were great communicators, be they visual or verbal communicators. And it was wonderful to have the two together because you could see, oh, if we are going to do awareness, we've got people here that can craft the message, and we got people here, the legislative message. One person knew how to do that, and the other people know how to get it out and make people aware. So that was exciting. Sarah, what would you like to tell us about your group?
Well, I couldn't have a better setup than what you just provided, Gail. So your highlights resonated very strongly with the small group of folks that I listened to, and the need for technical experts to work well with and to be creative with folks that focus on making that more emotional connection and building a movement. And what I was really struck by, everyone in my small group said this, that there is such internal expertise that what they really would love to see more of is internal information sharing, to know more about what the graduate school design is really doing, and to do more peer-to-peer learning in addition to external awareness raising and doing external events, reaching other folks in the community. So that to me was really interesting, and resonates very nicely, Gail, with your small group breakout room.
Thank you, Sarah. Now, just because this is what's next on my list, Sarah, Susie, Natty, could you go next?
We had a wonderful group, a very powerful group, and with quite a number of artists in the group. And we had, I think, 1, 2, 3, 4 artists in the group, and someone who's on the Clean Energy Commission. It was an incredible combination. And we talked about how educating individuals is important, which showed up on the survey, but that we also need to focus on educating developers and planners. We need to understand what's going on at the municipal level, at liaisons with government, because that's where policy decisions get made, that level. And we also talked about how do you reach people, both in your family and friend groups? How do you get over the hump of apathy? How do you educate all levels, and literally from people who are like at 5-year-old height up to adult size? You start thinking actually literally and visually about that. And then we had some real thinking outside the box of close the bridge, put galleries on it, and be able to have traffic ferried over the bridge to only electric cars on Cape Ann. It was great.
Thank you.
No, I mean, really, and I appreciated that, because I mean, we really, in some ways, we need to talk about, we need to think about, if you could start things from scratch, what kind of thing would you want to see?
Wow, very creative. Jim Seavey, do you have a report?
I do. The first and most important reaction that everybody had, I think, was that it made everyone hopeful to be able to have this meeting. And I think that was an incredibly important thing to come up with. And then we got into some of the basic kind of the holes that didn't get filled and the needs that we think. One was a suggestion that we have more exciting ways of presenting information. And Lisa's video about the sign was singled out as being a great success. So to build excitement about what we're doing. And then also missing was any suggestion. I think it was in the background of it, but that we had a sense of promoting dialogue. In other words, not just going out, but listening as well. And we need to do more listening, was this person's, or the sense of our group actually. And then also there was for number 2, there was an expression that we were by focusing on all of the high percentage results, that we have to still support the groups that are more interested in some of the items that didn't gather as much support. That we should not ignore those interests and those resources, because they're all important. And the feeling was that if we start with a strong vision, even these smaller groups, part of what we can do as a coalition is to identify the skills that people have to be able to help, and the enthusiasms that people will have to help to have some of these visions come to fruition. So that's it.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Okay, Lisa Smith, you're next on my screen, so you get to be next.
Great. Well, we had a very interesting and engaged group also, and our group was more on the science kind of legislative makeup of people. And so some of the things that came up were outreach. Like there was a member of the UU Church, and they were talking in Rockport, talking about how they could make, they have a climate group there, but they'd like to work with the coalition to make our climate voice stronger by moving together, which I think we could do. Then a lot of it, we talked about engaging with young people, getting them to, or through social media because they know how to use it, and get information out about climate change. And also, how do we engage students? Could we work with the school committees or the schools to get students? And there's a lot of scientists in the group. So having them have some kind of internship or something that is concrete kind of program, because they have so much going on. They kind of need a way to focus on climate where they could get credit or some kind of internship. And so that was something we talked about. And then other things we talked about was about energy, solar energy, renewable energy, more ways to get some of that information out there. How, if you want to get solar, more information on just concrete ways to do it. The last thing that someone said there was which we would have liked to talk to more is they need to know how people can work better with the Climate Coalition. And so that's it.
Good. Thank you so much. That's great. Valerie, you want to go next?
Yeah, thank you, Gail. So I'll paraphrase a little bit, but it was a great discussion. I thought everyone felt really positive and kind of inspired by what they saw expressed, and confirmed that there are a lot of things that we can do, and the commitments that people were making is really hopeful. That in terms of even just the duality of the survey, this came up about awareness building, and then on the other hand, education. And the mural project is being a great example of meeting people where they are, showing them something that they can relate to, but also being very careful that whatever we do is based in solid science. There's a recent example of a presentation where the modeling just wasn't right. And so it is that kind of duality, is being really grounded in solid science, but finding ways to reach people where they are with things in many different ways for all the people who offered to do the awareness building. Also, there was something of a duality of, we can engage some people, but in order to make and maybe get some proposals out there, but to get things to move, we have to really build the base of political support in the community to be a powerful group that's going to move state and local governments to do heavy investments. On the other hand, someone said it only takes a few to show up at meetings. So somewhere in between, we have to engage everyone and just a few of us, but that we as a movement can make a difference, and we should aim for that.
Thank you, Valerie. Susan, we'd love to hear from you. Oh, I'm sorry, this is Susan Hogue. I'm acting like everybody has the same screen I have. You can be.
We were actually put in the same group. So
Oh,
Susan,
you were?
we were. I'll start and then you can continue, all right?
Oh, good. The Susan and Susan show. Great.
It was a great group. We had discussion on how do you get from engagement to actually and having an action agenda. And there was a lot of discussion about the importance of action, more action and less talk. That was actually the theme of our group.
Right. On that, you want to add something, Susan?
Well,
Hope?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we also talked how the groups or the people could interact more, both on an informative level to learn what everybody else is doing, but also on a social level, so we could just meet and enjoy each other and have fun, and not be so serious all the time.
Oh, I like that. That's great.
Yes.
Marcia, how's your group?
I was in Dick's group. He'll
Oh,
talk.
okay. So Dick and Marcia, could you report?
Sure. We were a diverse group. We talked about many things, from the primacy of personal change as an example, and then policy situations and getting young people involved. They're being very moved by that. I think in summary, we really believe strongly that young adults and students should be engaged. And the coalition needs to really think about more creative ways and more systemic ways to do that. And we didn't talk about this, but I'm just thinking about, for example, Build Back Better has a whole thing on, having internships paid for by young adults, and that would be fascinating. So if that doesn't happen, maybe something on the state or municipal level could be constructed with our encouragement. And then finally, people were very passionate about protecting natural systems and using legislative to do that, in which I'll pass to Marcia because that's her bailiwick.
We talked about a few things that have legislative components to them, but we talked about the dark sky bill and lighting and about buildings and about talking to the planning boards and getting zoning things to be in line with climate issues. So everything, it was really soup to nuts in terms of talking about natural things, about we hardly got to renewables because we were talking about other things, but certainly people were concerned about that too. And things about having circular economy and really being prepared to make personal choices that were good for everyone.
This is very exciting, and the chat is very exciting as people talk about what they talked about. There's amazing things in the chat. So then I want to thank you all. It was very exciting, and one of you said it very clearly. It was very high on the survey. You want less words and more action. You've gotten a lot of words tonight. We're going to Valerie for a little bit of action for you to take home. Thank you.
So let me echo Gail and say thank you to everyone. And we'll be getting you the recording and you'll have the survey results as well. And we'll go on with next steps. A lot of great stuff to work with. So in terms of action, we're trying to put some things before you that you could do. And let me just run through these. If you haven't seen our newsletter, we're on number 2, thanks to Lisa's work and Ann Patrice. And check out our newsletter. And there are several things in there at the end, some instructions for and ideas for how to write to your legislator. And then you can go to meetings, but also we have a couple of signs for the coalition that you could put up in your yard. So let us know if you'd like a sign. And then there are some particular community engagement into governance. The city of Gloucester is doing a climate action plan, and you can watch the recording of the public presentation about that Gloucester planning effort. And then also we're giving you a link for how to fill out the survey that the city of Gloucester is asking you to help contribute to. And then in Rockport, there's an effort to mobilize support around energy reduction and other projects. So we're giving you an email address and a link to write to find out more information about Rockport. So actually, I encourage you to save the chat. That's down in the right-hand corner. So you can refer back to those links after the meeting has ended. And then I have the honor of, I guess it was mentioned at the beginning, of delivering a door prize. This is the choice of either a sign, and we can be in touch with you to show you a couple of options for a sign, or if you'd prefer something to read, the book Drawdown by Paul Hawken, the most comprehensive plan ever proposed to reverse global warming, which is a great comprehensive book. So I'd like to announce that the winner of the door prize is Joan Quinlan. I hope you're still here, Joan. We'll get in touch with you and you can. Yeah, great. We'll let you know. Hi. across the street.
Hey,
Yeah. We'll let you know which one you'd like to choose and we'll talk. Thank you. So I guess that's it for the evening. Gail and Sarah, anything
Yeah,
to wrap
thank you
up?
very much. We hope you all tomorrow choose one of those actions to do. You haven't read the newsletter, or do the actions at the back, or go to one of the meetings. You can come to one of our meetings. Thank you for coming to this one. We really appreciate it. And we'll be in touch with all of you.